Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 5 6 7 8 10. Mic check 10. Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4.
Because we're part of a nation, we're part of a nation where we also have partners. It's an army partners. It's an army. We talk about it. We talk about it. Shout to Mayor Fry. Shout to Mayor Fry. We're reaching. We're reaching. But I really think unfortunately, it's kind of like
The forum will come to order. I welcome the members. To today's forum on Operation Catahoula and the ICE invasion of Louisiana. I want to start by thanking Congressman Troy A for bringing us all down here to New Orleans. Stand united. Trump administration. Out of control immigration operation that have torn communities apart, terrorized citizens alike, injured and killed across this country. Most importantly, thank you to our witnesses, not only for coming to share your observations and recommendations with us, but also your on the ground to protect communities here in Louisiana from a Department of Homeland Security that relishes in chaos. Congressional Republicans have repeatedly refused to engage in oversight of the Department of Homeland Security because they are complicit in its crime. So we are here on the road doing the work that they refuse to do. Even in the face of video showing Alex and Renee Good, both United States citizens being murdered immigrant agents in Minneapolis. Republicans on the Homeland Security Committee have yet to schedule the acting director or commissioner of CBP to testify before the committee. Even as Americans have watched video after video of immigrants, children, and babies attacked by the Trump administration, Republicans have stayed silent. But you all know that. Last year, right here in New Orleans, the Trump administration lured an immigrant mother and her child to the local ICE field office, locked their attorney out of the room, and snuck the mother and child out the back door and into detention. Before anyone could get to the courts, ICE had this mother and her United States citizen child, who suffers from stage 4 cancer, on an airplane to Honduras. This unfolded in a matter of hours. When Democrats repeatedly confronted Republicans and Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, begging them to let this family come back to New Orleans for cancer treatment, they refused. The Trump administration relishes the notoriety and celebrates the cruelty. Sadly, things are only getting worse. Clergy have been shot with pepper balls. A baby girl was nearly killed when immigration officials shot pepper spray through her parents' truck window. Renee Good was shot to death 3 weeks ago. Alex Petty was murdered just this weekend after he was already restrained. An ICE detainee in Texas was allegedly choked to death by his guards. Citizen and immigrants are being dragged out of their homes in the dead of night in their underpants for no reason at all. And under President Trump's and Kristi Noem's leadership, 2025 was the deadliest year on record for individuals in ICE facilities. And I fear this year may set a new record as deaths of individuals in ICE facilities are already piling up. But I know I don't need to explain the level of inhumanity at these ICE facilities to people here in Louisiana. I know you are familiar with it. New Orleans and this nation are fortunate to have leaders like today's witnesses who work tirelessly to protect the rights and dignity of every person in this country. I look forward to hearing about your work, what you have observed during our Operation Catahoula Crunch, and your recommendation on how to save this nation. As Americans, we must continue to stand up and push back against the cruel Trump administration. The future of the country and the lives of our fellow Americans depend on it. I would now like to recognize Representative Troy A for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your partnership and your unwavering advocacy for the people of Mississippi and my home state of Louisiana, and for holding this critically important hearing here in my hometown of New Orleans. I want to extend a particular appreciation to other committee members who are here, who you will hear from shortly, Tim Kennedy from Buffalo, New York, and Seth Magazina from Rhode Island, who braved the storm to be with us today because of the importance of this issue, not just in New Orleans, not just in Louisiana, but across our country. And their leadership on Homeland Security has been nothing short of phenomenal during these very difficult times. I want to also thank our distinguished witnesses for joining us today, and more importantly, for their tireless work and advocacy on behalf of immigrant neighbors. I especially want to thank our mayor, Mayor Helena Moreno, who just weeks into her first term has made the time to be with us for this committee hearing. She's joined here by our illustrious and outstanding New Orleans City Council members led by President J.P. Morrell, two friends of mine that I've served with in the state legislature and honorably serve with now as they, along with their city council, will lead the city into the next generation of greatness. Mayor Moreno and President Morrell present here speaks volumes about their commitment for all of the residents of New Orleans. Their demonstration that they're not just talking about it, but they're here to do something about it, even in the face of great odds. We know that there's a great need out there, but the leadership of this city council and its mayor demonstrates their willingness and ability to work with state and federal partners to protect all of the people of our community. I'd also like to thank the members of the City Council who graciously, along with President Morrell, allowed us to sit in their home, to use their chamber, to hold this meeting, and we cannot thank you enough. A round of applause for the Mayor, President of the Council, and the members of the City Council. I'd like to, as I say your name, if you would stand up so you can be duly recognized, one of our newest members of the City Council, Amy McCarron from District A. Entering her second term, Leslie Harris, New Orleans City Council in District B. Freddie King III, who holds the seat that I once held when I was a former member of this City Council, representing District C. I don't think he's here yet, but give him a round of applause in his absence. He's been a great leader. Representing District D, Councilmember Eugene Green. Another one of our newest members, Eugene, is entering his second term as well, and so is Freddie King. Another brand new member who is a distinguished member of the Louisiana House of Representatives, Jason Hughes, council member elect, District E, or not elect, but District E council member. And certainly, last but certainly not least, another outstanding member, former member of the state legislature, who has now been elected to serve as council member at large, Matthew Willett. Collectively, this is the A team. Collectively led by our mayor and the city council president, this is the A team, the team that has been entrusted by the people of New Orleans to lead and to build a strong, all-in community. All in. This hearing is particularly consequential today as another U.S. citizen was murdered by DHS officers on Saturday. This is the third shooting by federal immigration agents in 3 weeks, and the second fatal shooting in Minneapolis during that time. The violence we're witnessing is sanctioned by dangerous rhetoric and reckless policies of the Trump administration and Secretary Noem. I've joined my colleagues in co-sponsoring articles of impeachment against Secretary Noem. Under her direction, DHS and ICE have systematically violated the rights and privacy of Americans, terrorized our cities, and obstructed Congress. This hearing represents a crucial opportunity for this committee to hear directly about those abuses and to understand the real impact of citizens and migrants alike since the Trump administration began its harsh immigration enforcement roundup. What we learned here today will help us investigate and hold this administration accountable for its actions. In December, these things escalated dramatically here in Louisiana as Department of Homeland Security commenced the so-called Operation Catahoula Crunch. This enforcement campaign has been profound and chilling effects on the immigrant communities, including many who first came here to help rebuild our city after the catastrophic devastations of Hurricane Katrina and others in 2005. These individuals arrived when we needed them most, and then they stayed. They set up homes, raised families, started businesses, and became integral members of our community. But they are now under threat. In Louisiana, we've heard heartbreaking stories of children, United States citizens who were deported. We've heard about a child with cancer who was caught up in the enforcement actions. We've seen children stay home from school, afraid to leave their houses. We've seen businesses shuttered because their owners and workers live in fear. And most tragically, we've seen deaths, including a Honduran oysterman who was drowned while fleeing federal immigration agents. Here in New Orleans, we welcome partnership with federal authorities. Let me be very clear. We welcome partnership with federal authorities, but we do not welcome occupation. And that distinction is critical and must be clear. If you want to help, coordinate with our mayor, coordinate with our city council, coordinate with our sheriffs and our police department, coordinate with our parish presidents, coordinate with our leaders, and we will show you how to help us best. But if you're here to have shock and awe, political theater, and to violate people's rights, we just don't need you here. That is the message that we want to be very clear. Let no one mistake what this hearing is about. This hearing is to say, we will take help if you do it right. We will not tolerate the unlawful stop, search, and seizure of individuals because they look a certain way, because they sound a certain way, because they're in a certain place. Not in America, and certainly not in New Orleans. Our communities are not a stage for political theater. If the administration truly wants to help, we have lots of ways. Share the operational plan. Respect local laws and leadership. Work with us, not around us. Beyond Operation Catahoula Crunch, Louisiana has become a hub of immigration detention since the second Trump administration. The state now has the second highest number of people detained in ICE facilities of any state in the nation. Thousands of people spread across 10 large-scale detention facilities. Last spring, I, along with members of this committee, visited facilities and we met with people that had been lawfully permanent residents but were being held, in many cases, without any knowledge to their families or their legal representation, simply for exercising First Amendment rights, to criticize government, to speak out against things that they felt were wrong. We know better, and we will continue to fight to make sure that the voices of the people are heard. Mr. Chairman, the testimony we'll hear today will be essential to our oversight responsibilities. We'll use what we learned to investigate these operations, to demand answers, and to hold this administration accountable for actions that undermine both public policy and the constitutional rights that we hold sacred. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Let me very quickly introduce the other members of the panel. Actually, they're happy to get to New Orleans because the first person is from Buffalo, New York. And if you know anything about Buffalo, New York, where we are now, it's a heat wave. So this is Representative Tim Kennedy from Buffalo, and I'll yield to him for any comment.
Thank you. Just very briefly want to thank all of you for welcoming us here to this great city. I want to thank Ranking Member Thompson, former and future chair of Homeland Security Committee in the House, and my colleague from Rhode Island, Congressman Magaziner. I really want to recognize and thank Congressman Troy A, who is not just an incredible leader here in Louisiana and up in Washington, but all across the nation. I mean, he has a true voice, a moral compass, and a voice of reason and fortitude that you should all be proud of as New Orleans and Louisiana residents. And, you know, to really work with him and see him on the ground in his home city where there's not a day that goes by that he's not talking about New Orleans. I'm really honored to be here with all of you and to see the great mayor of New Orleans and the council president and all of these councilmen and women and these advocates and students and leaders from the community to come together in a shared voice that not only is New Orleans and Louisiana better than what's happening and what's been forced upon you by ICE and this out-of-control administration of Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, but America is better. We are better than what they're dishing out. We deserve better, and we demand better. So we're here to work with you, to hear from you, and we will see better days ahead. So thank you for allowing me to be here with you.
Thank you so much. I now introduce another New Englander who is from Providence, Rhode Island. So needless to say, he's happy to be here too.
Right.
Seth Magaziner.
Thank you very much to the ranking member and to all of you. So it's true, I come from Rhode Island, but I'm really happy to be here in my second favorite state. I lived in Louisiana. I was in Opelousas for a couple years and then lived right down the street on Burgundy Street. I got here shortly after Katrina, and I recall the mayor from her broadcasting days. It's cool to see. Congratulations. It's cool to see all that you've done. And from my time living here, I saw firsthand the strength of this city. This is a city that has been through the ringer over and over again, but always comes out of it stronger, prouder, with a real incredible spirit. And so it's just wonderful to be back. And I look forward to learning from all of you today. You know, where I come from, I represent a district where Donald Trump got 47% of the vote. And I understand that people want to see immigration laws enforced, but not like this. Not like it's being done under this administration. People do not want to see families separated. Children, including U.S. citizen children, with serious illnesses from this city deported. They don't want to see U.S. military veterans deported. They do not want to see masked agents invading neighborhoods, beating people in the streets, barging into people's houses without warrants, people being killed for protesting and exercising their First Amendment rights. This is not what people want to see. And as has been said, the Republicans in Congress are not doing their job. They're not having hearings. They're not conducting any oversight whatsoever. And so if they're not going to do their jobs, we will. We are going to continue to have hearings like this one all across the country and in Washington to call attention to what is happening. And when we take the majority back next year, we are going to do the job of reining in ICE, reining in this lawless administration, and restoring the rights of the people. And so we are here today so that you can help us do that work. We want to learn from you what your experience has been as a city and how you have gotten through Catahoula Crunch. And we want to hear from you, your feedback on what reforms you want to see when we are back in the majority. So thank you all. And thank you to Congressman Carter, who does a phenomenal job representing this proud city in the United States Congress. Thank you, Troy.
And now I yield to Congressman Carter for introduction of our witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can have a moment of personal privilege, if you look behind you, in addition to many hats that I wear, I also serve as adjunct professor of political science at Xavier University, and we're blessed to have some of my students here today. Stand up proud, Xavier University. These are outstanding students at Xavier University in the political science department who many are studying to do what we do. Some want to be doctors, lawyers, but they're here, and we're very proud to have them have an opportunity to see their government in action. It is my honor to introduce the witnesses that will be addressing us today. The Honorable Helena Moreno is the 63rd mayor of the city of New Orleans. She was sworn in on January 12th of this year, but is not new to the people of New Orleans. Mayor Moreno was a trusted voice of the people as an Emmy Award-winning journalist before becoming a state legislator. Mayor Moreno also served with distinction as a member and president of the New Orleans City Council. Mayor, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing us to be in your fair city, our fair city. Thank you so much. She is seated next to the Honorable Jean-Paul J.P. Morel, who serves as president of New Orleans City Council and has been an at-large member of the City Council since January 2022. Before joining the City Council, he championed New Orleans area while serving Louisiana State Senate from 2008 to 2020, and in Louisiana House of Representatives from 2006 to 2008. Council President Morel began his career as a public defender advocating for those without a voice. He continues to do that now as president of the New Orleans City Council. Alanah Odoms is a distinguished civil rights attorney who serves as executive director of the Louisiana ACLU. Under her leadership, the ACLU of Louisiana has embraced a focus on representing and investing in marginalized communities to ensure that constitutional rights are restored and protected from the ground up. Thank you for being here with us, Alanah. Homero Lopez is the legal director of Immigration Services and Legal Advocacy. The son of immigrant workers, Homero brings lived experience to his work with immigrants and has worked extensively with immigrants held at detention centers here in Louisiana. Tanya Wolf is the Southeast Advocacy Manager for the National Immigration Project, where she coordinates and strengthens coalitions and networks among immigrant right advocates across Louisiana and the broader Southeast. She is also representing the Southeast Dignity and Not Detention Coalition, a collective of individuals and organizations working to end immigrant detention in the U.S. Southeast. Reverend Sean Anglem is the pastor of First Grace United Methodist Church, the result of the merger of historic black church and historical white church in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. During his tenure, First Grace established Hager's House, a residence for women, children, and trans women, and Project Ishmael, a free legal clinic for immigrant children. Give all of our panelists a big round of applause. I'd like to have you also join me again in welcoming and giving a big round of applause to our illustrious mayor as she gives opening remarks. I'm not sure how long our members can stay, but we certainly would love you to stay as long as you can, but certainly want to give you the floor, ma'am, to address the members and the audience.
Well, thank you. Good morning, Ranking Member Thompson, and of course to our Congressman Carter, and to the other members of the committee, Congressman Kennedy and Congressman Magaziner. It's great to have you in the beautiful city of New Orleans. You've asked me to come before you today to give some opening statements, but also to give my testimony regarding Border Patrol operations in New Orleans and in our region. in particular the operation called Catahoula Crunch. I want to make clear that I have received no direct information from Border Patrol and that they have kept me and city leadership in the dark, except for information that we've received through media news releases. What we know is that the operation began in early December. News releases from the Department of Homeland Security describe the operation as targeting, quote, the worst of the worst offenders in the New Orleans area. Now, despite these constant claims by DHS and Border Patrol, what we witnessed has not been the case. What we have witnessed is nonviolent individuals being overwhelmingly targeted and profiled. Across our city and region, teams of agents were deployed to profile, question, and round up predominantly Hispanic individuals. Countless stories were reported by our local media of Hispanic people, including some who are American citizens, being questioned, chased, and detained. This has caused widespread fear throughout our city and our region. Parents took their kids out of school, workers stopped showing up at their jobs, and my church, where we have a large Spanish-speaking service, people stopped coming to worship. It should be noted that in New Orleans, we are seeing historic reductions in violent crime due to investments that we've made in crime prevention and also through the work of our New Orleans Police Department and partners. In fact, the homicide rate right now is the lowest that it has been in 50 years. I support, of course, taking murderers, shooters, rapists, and violent offenders off our streets. But as I mentioned before, it became very clear from the start of Catahoula Crunch that the mode of operation was for agents to find and target groups of predominantly Hispanic individuals and then figure out who they are later. The numbers released by Assistant Secretary of DHS, Tricia McLaughlin, on January 9th, which was reported by local news, by the way, claimed that Operation Catahoula Crunch had made over 560 arrests, once again claiming to nab the, quote, worst of the worst, yet only 6% of those arrested had any type of criminal record. On December 5th, I held a news conference with community advocates, the New Orleans City Council, our Congressman Troy A, and National Urban League President and former Mayor of New Orleans, Moreno, to address the Border Patrol actions during Catahoula Crunch. At that time, we stated that federal operations in our city had to be conducted transparently, constitutionally, and with respect of local residents. We emphasized that public safety, the protection of people's rights, and maintaining trust between the government and the community were our top priorities. As a collective, we made several demands. We called for regular public reporting on stops, detentions, warrants, and civil rights compliance. We demanded strong due process protections, including access to legal representation and no detentions without proper warrants and probable cause. We requested that federal agents be clearly identifiable, uniformed, and unmasked to avoid confusion and protect public safety. We also demanded safeguards against discriminatory enforcement and requested demographic data to ensure individuals were not targeted based on race, ethnicity, national origin, language, or perceived immigration status. Finally, we emphasized the need for humane treatment, including access to medical care, language interpretation, and family notification for anyone who is detained. I also penned a letter to Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, emphasizing the need for these basics: communication, transparency, and upholding constitutional rights. I never directly received a response to my letter, but as Bovino walked through the nearby city of Kenner, surrounded by masked agents, he was asked by a reporter about my demands, and his response was, quote, "This is as transparent as it gets." Ladies and gentlemen, what we saw here, and now in a much more severe fashion in the city of Minneapolis, is no longer an issue of immigration, public safety, or even politics. This is a cruel, divisive agenda lacking humanity. Overwhelmingly, the people of America question what these ICE agents are even doing, except for creating chaos, ignoring the Constitution, and costing lives. Close to 2/3 of this country now believes that ICE enforcement has gone too far. I'm hearing from people on the left and on the right who say that this is ultimately just un-American. I'm the first Latina mayor of the city of New Orleans. I was born in Mexico to an American mother. My father is originally from Mexico. I'm an American by birth and here to tell you that what actually makes America great is our diversity, is our cultural differences, and it's our overall diverse backgrounds. Do we need comprehensive immigration reform? I think the clear answer is yes. And it's complicated, and it's not easy. But we ask you to please take on this very important work. We need a path for those who are doing the right thing, those hard-working members of our society to gain citizenship. These are our neighbors, workers, friends, who often, due to difficult and complicated circumstances, are undocumented. As members of Congress, I ask you to please take on this very important type of reform. But more than anything, right now, we need you. We need you to continue to step up, to intervene, and to hold ICE and Border Patrol accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Next, we'll hear from Next, we'll hear from the President of City Council, J.P. Morrell. Round of applause for our mayor. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. And thank you both for working with us as well as the City Council with the dangerous weather that we saw coming. We were touch and go how we would pull this off. But I want to say publicly to the members of the City Council, the President and the Mayor, thank you so much for working with our schedules to make this very important hearing happen.
Well,
Mr. President.
Good morning. Thank you, Congressman Carter, for getting this meeting done today. Thank you, Congressman Magaziner, Congressman Kennedy, and the once and future chairman of Homeland Security, Congressman Thompson. I want to thank you for convening this field hearing and coming to New Orleans to hear directly from communities like ours impacted by ICE's actions. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the tragic loss in Minneapolis. The killing of Renee Good and Alex Peretti by Department of Homeland Security, more specifically, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, while they were peacefully protesting, is an outrageous and criminal act. We support full investigation and justice for their families. What's happening in Minneapolis is devastating. What may happen in New Orleans could be even worse. Minneapolis has a Democratic governor and a Democratic mayor who are working together to protect their city. New Orleans does not. We are a Democratic city and a Republican state governed by leaders who at the state level support the weaponization of ICE agents against anyone who appears to have international heritage. And for those of you familiar with New Orleans, that's pretty much all of us. If Minneapolis is the tip of the spear, New Orleans is the handle. A blue city in a red state being used as a test case. So goes New Orleans, so goes the South. New Orleans is a free city and will remain a free city. People don't wear masks in our city unless it's a Mardi Gras parade. We're a city that looks after its own. It's how we do things around here. In the face of adversity, New Orleans has always resisted. We resisted 2 foreign empires, civil war, segregation, and injustice, and we will resist this too. This is the city of be nice or leave and be kind to all kinds. I want to thank you, Congressman Thompson, for mentioning that family, that mother and child who was receiving cancer treatment, who were ingloriously deported in the midst of that treatment. We have a tremendous children's hospital in Manny Family's Children's. My wife is a pediatric nurse, was once an oncology nurse, and the position this administration is putting our healthcare workers in is untenable. Their job is to save lives, not to worry about where those kids come from, whether they're citizens or not. Their job is to save their lives. And to put those pressures on healthcare workers doing their job is unconscionable. Today, you'll hear from people on the ground during Catahoula Crunch, protecting neighbors in an increasingly hostile environment, often standing alone while surrounding jurisdictions welcomed ICE through 287G agreements. I want to emphasize that. ICE has a policy of allowing different jurisdictions to support their message, support their weaponization, and New Orleans stands alone in that we are a city in a sea of different cities that are welcoming ICE in with their tactics and their efforts. We need you to lift the voices of the people that are here today, to learn from them and to stand with us. What's happening here isn't new. The rhetoric and violence that has metastasized throughout our country is nestled deep in our history books, ultimately being repeated right before our very eyes. It starts with immigration enforcement, moves to voter suppression, and ends in military occupation. As we sit here today, we as a community have witnessed firsthand in a barrage of constitutional violations, complete disregard for due process, public resources being used to intimidate communities into submission. But our country's founders, with wisdom and flaws and all, contemplated these dark times we find ourselves presently in, and thus created a constitution that enshrined liberties to every citizen and laid the foundation for what we call democracy. Let me add, the depth of this invasion, the squandering of local resources, state resources, and federal resources really runs up right against the Third Amendment. Our founders created the Third Amendment to not quarter soldiers in our homes. When you look at what's happening with ICE across this country, you have a monarch who is trying to force invaders into our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a boiling point. How we as a nation move forward will be the ultimate test if, in America, all men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our country depends on this moment. United we stand, and divided we fall. We will not rest until this White House respects the rule of law, the importance of our shared humanity, and the promise of the land of the free and home of the brave. We are but one city in a nation built upon strong cities, but we will stand up, speak out, and keep our focus on the principles that this great nation was founded upon. Thank you for your time and attention today.
I yield back, Mr. Chair.
That's right.
Thank both of you for your opening remarks. We couldn't be more on the same page than what you said. Thank you so much. So, Mayor, we know you and President Moreno might have to leave, but your points have been absolutely made, and we really appreciate it. And there's nothing wrong with standing out, you know, because you're also standing up, and that's what it's all about. So we appreciate both of you. But I thank you for your testimony. So we'll now recognize Ms. Odoms to summarize her statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Congressman Carter, Ranking Member Thompson, Congressman Magaziner, and Congressman Kennedy. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here to testify this morning. My name is Alanah Odoms, and I serve as the Executive Director of the ACLU of Louisiana. I'll start with a quote. "The land of the free was forged out of slavery and genocide. Of the countless vestiges of slavery and racial terror, mass incarceration and mass deportation and detention of Black and brown immigrants have its metaphysical DNA." These are the words of Michelle Alexander. And I raise those words here today to help explain to you the fundamental mission of the ACLU, which is to dismantle these systems of oppression and segregation, and to speak to our greater organizing principles, in that we are committed to being agents of real social change at our organization. And we are committed to serving those who are most vulnerable in our community and to protecting and defending their most fundamental constitutional rights. I want to commend Ranking Member Thompson and also Congressman Carter and say how proud I am of you for you continuing to shine a light, a sanitizing light, on this atrocity that is happening here in the state of Louisiana, which is the epicenter of mass deportation and detention, but also on this issue, which is a plague and a scourge to the American democracy. Your leadership in continuing to bring this to the national forefront, continuing to prioritize the incarcerated around our nation, and continuing to encourage your colleagues to exhibit the courage and strength that it takes, sometimes under duress and under prosecution, to exercise your oversight is commendable. Thank you both from the bottom of our hearts and from all of us here in the state of Louisiana and across the southern region, the state of Mississippi as well. As you know, the origins of policing began with slave patrols, where certain citizens were empowered to accost and to take anyone they believed to be a fugitive. ICE and CBP have adopted these same tactics to capture and brutalize both American citizens and people of diverse backgrounds, assuming they are fugitives and violating their fundamental constitutional rights. The only difference between slave patrols and the behaviors that we see exhibited by ICE and CBP today is that we did not have the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which outlaws slavery. We did not have the passage of the 14th Amendment, which guarantees birthright citizenship, equal protection, and due process, not just to Americans, but to all persons on the grounds of American soil. The ACLU National Office will be litigating the birthright citizen case before the United States Supreme Court in the Supreme Court's next tenure, and we do believe that we will be able to affirm 14th Amendment protections for all persons in this country. As you know, Louisiana has long been at the center of mass incarceration, Congressman Carter, and also the now epicenter of mass deportation and detention, as evidenced by the insidious and overwhelming system of immigration confinement in our state. Here we have the Alexandria Staging Facility, the only deportation facility attached to an airport in the United States, and our state is home to 10 immigrant detention facilities, which have, for years, subjected immigrants to horrific and unlawful conditions. This includes the newly reopened Camp 57 at Angola Penitentiary, one of the most infamous prisons in our nation, previously closed due to inhumane conditions. It is a former slave plantation, continuing to draw on the connections that I've iterated for you this morning. And now we come to you from the front lines of this system, which has emboldened in an unprecedented way the inhumane and unconstitutional behaviors that we see that are now impacting our citizens through the Catahoula Crunch invasion. Ranking Member Thompson, I believe that was the right language, the appropriate nomenclature to use. Catahoula Crunch, the name itself is dog whistle. Catahoula is Louisiana's state dog, but it was historically used to hunt and track human beings during the period of slavery. That symbolism is not accidental. It reflects how communities of color experience these operations, not as public safety, but as human, person, and manhunts. When ICE and CBP ramped up their operations here, though, we prepared to deploy our own learnings from other cities and our own learnings from working deeply in community and with our partners. Our team partnered with the Southeast Dignity and Detention Coalition and other advocacy groups and leaders to enact a network of mutual aid and information channels to immigrant communities and to ally groups. This network facilitated the creation of a hotline to monitor CBP and ICE actions, to know where they were, what they were doing, and also to help with the dissemination of KYR materials, shelter-in-place guidance, and mutual aid actions such as grocery deliveries and family support. We were not about to let the government operate in the dark, and we were not going to allow our citizens to shelter in place without the necessary supports. When local groups halted KYR presentations for fear of broad government interpretation of Act 399, the new state law that criminalizes any obstruction of federal immigration operations, our partners here valiantly served and stepped up as plaintiffs, ISLA, and allowed us to bring an action against the Attorney General, clarifying Act 399. And in that case, we were able to hear from the state government and from AG Murrell specifically that Act 399 should not criminalize protected First Amendment speech. And I believe that is so important because what we see happening in the state of Minnesota, in Minneapolis, is the prosecution, murder, and criminalization of protected First Amendment speech. And we decided that we wanted to clarify that in this state for all of our citizens to make sure that they would not be gunned down by Border Patrol and by ICE, and we believe that is so important. For nearly 4 years, our legal team at the ACLU of Louisiana has gone inside these facilities, all 10 of these facilities. We have conducted monthly KYR presentations and provided life-saving information and support. We have documented the gross human rights violations and gross civil liberties violations in various reports, of which this committee is aware, the first of which was our In the Black Hole report, and a new report which we just released called Year One, documenting the abuses and human rights violations which you all saw with your own eyes. And I do want to commend, once again, our ranking member and our congressman for actually demanding the release of pregnant women who were held in Basile and actually ensuring the release of those women, because we were told that pregnant people were not being held, and we in fact saw that that was not the case, and their voices ensured that those persons were released. So thank you so much. I'm going to conclude just by saying a couple of last words about the killings that have happened, because we've been talking about deportation and detention. Renee Good, Alex Peretti, Keith Porter, and 26 others who have been murdered by federal agents. You know that the Section 1983 laws came out of Act 1871, which actually was an anti-lynching act. We need a federal analog for Section 1983 to ensure that we can hold federal officers accountable who violate fundamental constitutional rights. We need you to continue to exercise your oversight and authorities. We know that you will face inevitable pressures and even prosecution for doing so, but we ask you to stand firm, continue to investigate, continue to shine that sanitizing light, and continue to be brave and courageous, and continue to reflect the love, the deep love and compassion that we have for our citizens, all of our citizens, and all of our people here in the state of Louisiana as you do your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I speak for all of my colleagues. We will continue to do that. Thank you for your testimony. We now recognize Mr. Lopez for his statement for 5 minutes.
Good morning, and I'd like to thank Congressman Carter, Ranking Member Thompson, Congressman Kennedy, and Congressman Magaziner for being here today and asking me to speak before you. My name is Homero Lopez Jr. I am the Legal Director at Immigration Services and Legal Advocacy, the only organization providing direct, free legal representation to detained immigrants on a regular basis throughout Louisiana's detention centers. I'd like to take my time today to highlight the story of one of our clients, Lener, who can't be here today because instead of continuing to be a productive member of our community, he's been locked away in the Central Louisiana ICE Processing Center in Gina, Louisiana for the past 2 months. This disgraceful operation, Catahoula Crunch, is an unfortunate but foreseeable outgrowth of decades of bipartisan failure to address immigration reform, a system which still operates fundamentally on the framework set out in 1965. As a result of the limited legal pathways available to people seeking to immigrate to the United States, many have been forced to take treacherous paths and risk their lives entering the United States without permission. The United States interventionist foreign policy in places like Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and many others have destabilized governments and forced many citizens of those countries to flee. These are the circumstances in which Lynette's mother found herself, making the gut-wrenching decision to leave Honduras and leave her child with extended family. She chose to come to the United States, and specifically New Orleans, because of its long-standing connection to Central America, and specifically Honduras. As a teenager, Lynette became vulnerable to gang operations in Honduras, eventually making the decisions to flee Honduras for his safety in hopes of reunifying with his mother. He entered the United States as an unaccompanied child in 2021. He immediately turned himself into Border Patrol upon crossing. After his mother submitted herself to a background check and established their relationship, Lynette was released into her custody, and they were able to reunite in the New Orleans area. Lynette attended high school in Kenner, where he worked hard and he earned a place on the honor roll in high school. After a Louisiana state court found Lynette had been abandoned by his father and it was not in his best interest to return to Honduras, Lynette was able to apply for a form of relief called Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. He applied for that in December of 2021, and that application was approved in August of 2022. As a result of that approval, he was also granted deferred action. Deferred action is necessary for special immigrant juveniles because of the over 5-year backlog that exists for that particular classification, which makes them ineligible to be granted permanent resident status. That deferred action designation allowed Lynette to obtain a work permit and a driver's license. He started working to help his mother with the household needs, as well as his own personal needs. At this time, Lynette also approached an Army recruiter because he wanted to join and he had an interest in serving the country who had provided him and his family safety and offered him an opportunity to better his life. Unfortunately, he was ineligible to join the Army until he's granted permanent resident status. Nonetheless, for the last 3 years, Lynette has remained in contact with that same Army recruiter, and he is willing to join the Army and serve his country as soon as he is eligible. On December 2nd, 2025, the day before the Catahoula Crunch was officially launched, he was arrested. Lynette drove to work, as he regularly did. When he parked outside the restaurant, 2 uniformed Border Patrol agents approached his car and asked him for identification and his immigration status. Believing that he was protected because he had followed the process and he had documentation, he presented them with his driver's license and his work permit. The officers told him that was not enough to prove that he was legally present in the United States, and they shipped him away. Lynette was sent to the notorious Central Louisiana ICE Processing Center in Gina, Louisiana, where he turned 22 just 2 weeks ago. This location has a history of racial injustice in Louisiana, as it served as a juvenile prison prior to serving as an immigration incarceration center of the Gina 6 in 2006. While there, he has been stripped of his deferred action protection as a result of the Trump administration's policy, which rescinded the previous 2022 policy, which automatically granted deferred action to special immigrant juveniles. This rescission remains in effect, notwithstanding the order from the District Court of the Eastern District of New York issuing a stay against that policy. Lynette's history of doing well in school, having steady employment, strong community ties, as well as his approved special immigrant juvenile application, and his lack of criminal history would historically have resulted in him being released on a minimal bond. However, on September 5th, 2025, the Board of Immigration Appeals, which has now been purged of any member who would seemingly not fall in line with this administration's policy and is now dominated by Trump appointees, issued a presidential decision overturning decades of legal precedent and finding that any immigrant who entered the country without permission is ineligible for release on bond. As a result, Lynette was denied bond and remains detained in the torturous conditions associated with Louisiana detention centers. Lynette is only one of hundreds of contributing members from our community who have been detained under these types of operations, and one of tens of thousands around the country who have been detained under these operations. These operations are filled by tactics. These operations are highlighted by racial profiling and a complete disregard of our community members' fundamental rights. We must continue to bear witnesses against these abuses and crimes and hold those responsible accountable. The murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy demonstrate that ICE is beyond reform and must be abolished. Congress must take back their constitutionally mandated authority over immigration matters and make sure to check an authoritarian executive when it oversteps its bounds. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And as all our witnesses, we'll have some questions when we finish. We now recognize Ms. Wolf to summarize her statement for 5 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Ranking Member Thompson, Congressman Carter, Congressman Kennedy, Congressman Magaziner, for holding this important forum. My name is Tanya Wolf, and I serve as the Southeast Advocacy Manager for the National Immigration Project and as a steering committee member of the Southeast Dignity Not Detention Coalition. I've been an advocate for immigrant justice for over 10 years, supporting organizing campaigns, grassroots advocacy, and conducting numerous legal orientations to immigrant community members, including to people in immigrant detention. The coalition is a collective of individuals and organizations led by those systems impacted, working together to end immigrant detention in the U.S. Southeast region. We envision a future where all people can live with dignity and freedom, and where the resources once spent on cages and surveillance are redirected into community-based support and care. And our work at the coalition closely aligns with the work of the National Immigration Project, a membership organization of attorneys, advocates, and community members who are driven by the belief that all people should be treated with dignity. Today, I would like to bring to your attention the humanitarian crisis and state violence that immigrant communities in the city of New Orleans and surrounding communities in Jefferson Parish are facing. Families are forced to shelter in place because of Operation Catahoula Crunch, fearful of leaving their homes because of the possibility of detention and deportation. Because breadwinners can't go to work, immigrant individuals and families are at risk of losing their homes, going hungry, and sacrificing their children's right to an education. Immigrant community members, both with and without status, are being separated from their loved ones because of arbitrary arrests conducted by ICE, CBP, and cooperating local and state law enforcement agencies. This level of enforcement also has a negative impact on access to health care. Pregnant women missing prenatal appointments, newborns missing well baby checkups, children with infections whose parents fear taking them to the emergency room, uncontrolled diabetes, and a lack of access to prescriptions due to the fear of picking them up. A doctor in the community told me that one of their patients went off their blood thinners because they were so afraid of getting tackled and sustaining a brain bleed at the hands of ICE. Since families began sheltering in place, two of the most immediate and still ongoing needs that we've seen have been safe transportation to and from school and work, and food and supplies for families. Overnight, our food distribution requests went from 30 to 400 families because they are sheltering in place during Operation Catahoula Crunch. We've also seen a great need from expectant and postpartum parents and mothers. Our group received an overwhelming number of requests for diapers, wipes, and infant formula, the bare essentials for sustaining new life. By Christmas Eve, a time typically reserved for joy, some families were in dire need of food, supplies, rent support, electricity, and phone bill aid, among other urgent needs. Meanwhile, that first week of deployment, schools in the greater metro area began to see a steep reduction in attendance. Parents have been forced to make unimaginable decisions, like, do I risk my safety and my family's by continuing to bring my children to school? Or do I keep them at home and away from the routines that are healthy and familiar to them? In addition to causing this widespread harm and deprivation, Catahoula Crunch has also increased the number of people in ICE's detention centers, of which there are 10 in Louisiana and 1 in Mississippi. The latest data shows that ICE detention centers in these two states are collectively incarcerating 9,348 human beings. With the projected average daily cost to incarcerate a person in ICE detention at $164.25, we are spending about $1,539,409 a day to detain our immigrant community members in these states alone. In 2025, Governor Landry reopened Camp J at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. Our conversations with people detained inside Camp J revealed that the facility reopened with life-threatening shortfalls, no medical unit, pipes that overflowed with feces and urine, and no religious services. To this day, taxpayer dollars are being used to detain a 72-year-old man diagnosed with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's at Camp J, who has been subjected to medical neglect and psychological abuse. Last year, 32 people died in ICE custody, an all-time high. Now there have been 6 deaths in ICE custodies in just 10 days of 2026, including a homicide of someone in detention at the hands of jail guards. ICE is already jailing an unprecedented 70,000 plus people. If Congress continues to bankroll ICE's mass detention program, this crisis will only worsen. ICE will use this funding to keep expanding a dangerous infrastructure, which includes local, state and federal jails, prisons, military bases, warehouses, and more. 2 proposals to warehouse people, literally like cattle, are in the Southeast, in Port Allen, Louisiana, and Helena, Mississippi. If open, that would add an additional 9,000 beds to these 2 states' already grim total. As a child of immigrants who has spent a significant amount of time in ICE jails in the Southeast U.S. for the past 5 years, it personally frightens me to think about even more human beings in these hellish cages. Every time I walk into a detention center, I see my people staring back at me, and it's hard for me not to imagine that it could be my grandmother, my father, my aunt, my cousins, or my friends and neighbors suffering indescribable anguish, loss, pain, and hopelessness. Since December 2025, I have been carrying my U.S. passport in my bag every time I leave the house. Since December 2025, I have also been carrying a whistle with me, ready to alert the community of ICE and CBP activity. And when I blow that whistle, I'm also pleading, not one more detained, not one more family being broken, not one more deportation. But the reality is that without intervention to stop these murderous and violent agencies, our pleas fall empty. On behalf of the Coalition and the National Immigration Project, I urge you not to avert your eyes from this reality. I respectfully request that you carry our community's pain and suffering here back to your colleagues in DC, and that you urge them to ensure not one more dime goes to ICE or other DHS agencies. I respectfully request you make every effort under your jurisdiction on this committee to end ICE operations everywhere, to demand full legal accountability for the abuses done by federal immigration officers, and conduct a transparent, independent investigation into ICE and Border Patrol for human rights and constitutional violations. Lastly, the scale of abuse and suffering in ICE detention centers cannot fully be understood or conveyed from briefs or testimony. Please visit Camp J and other detention centers in Louisiana and Mississippi to witness firsthand the humanitarian crisis unfolding in your states. Thank you.
You know, there's no testimony better than personal experience. So we thank you for it. And obviously it resonates. We have our final witness, Reverend Ingram, who we're very familiar with as one United Methodist to another. We'll try to get you to summarize in 5 minutes, Pastor, but I'm going to give you the magic minute.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I just want to say how grateful I am for everyone who's been providing testimony and their witness. 10 months after the storm, my pregnant wife and 3-year-old daughter and I moved to this city, like a lot of immigrants moved to this city, to be a part of rebuilding this place and to become a part of this wonderful place. And everyone here knows who rebuilt this city. And this city is as much theirs as it is mine or anybody else's. That cannot be ignored 20 years later, because many of them stayed like I have stayed, and this has become their city where they've raised their families and become our neighbors and friends. First Grace is one of many houses of worship that partners with groups like Familia Unidas and Union Migrante to host meetings, to partner with them, to defend often the mistreatment of our immigrant neighbors and friends, and now to box hundreds and hundreds of boxes of food each week to take to immigrants where they can feel a little bit safer. Our church also has a legal clinic, Project Ishmael, which has over 100 cases and one very terrific attorney whose name happens to be Angela Davis. And what has started to happen again under this administration happened very early on last year. One of our high school clients, junior, left school with Project Ishmael, our legal clinic, one of our representatives, to go to her scheduled ICE check-in. She has a legal case. It's working through the system. And when they got there, ICE immediately arrested her. And as we protested, they said, you can represent them from detention. And then they shipped them across to another state into Mississippi, to a detention center there, to, of course, make it more difficult to represent them. This has become common practice. When I ask Angela, what should I tell these representatives of Congress that they should do? She says, tell them they should abolish ICE. It doesn't make anyone safer. It confuses everyone. Who does ICE answer to? It's really hard to tell. Our head of maintenance at First Grace, who lived in sanctuary at our church for 9 years, while he had a legal case, but was told by ICE he was going to be deported anyway, he is now, has legal standing here. He has been followed multiple times by ICE. An unmarked car pulls up in front of his vehicle while he's driving down Canal Street, another unmarked vehicle behind his vehicle, another unmarked vehicle on the side of his vehicle while they run his license plate. Why would they do that to him and not me? Because he's got brown skin. It's nothing new, it's just worse. Most recently, he was at a gas station getting gas in his truck. A vehicle pulled up behind his car, a vehicle pulled up in front of his car, unmarked. Men with masks get out, stand right next to him while they're running his license plate. Then they slink away. This is everyday experience in America, and I am appalled. We are a sacred place. Churches actually have a politics, and it's very simple and clear. Whatsoever you do to the least, you do unto me. That is the words of our Jesus Christ that we try to follow and get as close to as we can. And we have this big steeple on our church. And when people see that steeple, it means something to them. I can go there and I expect people to care about me. Not because I'm a Christian, not because I'm an immigrant, not because I'm a citizen, not because I'm any of those things, because I'm a human being. You expect us to care. And I believe the country expects us to care about them. And now it's much harder to do that if you think someone's going to bust down your door because you're caring about the least. I would ask you to please put back in place the policies that make sacred places like churches, mosques, synagogues, and even hospitals and schools sacred. Finally, I just want to say how proud I am of our fellow citizens of New Orleans. What we have done during this past few weeks and months has been so inspiring. Hundreds of us gathering all over the city, demanding and protecting our neighbors and immigrants. We now see it in Minneapolis in larger fold, and I believe we will continue to see it because Americans know who we want to be, even if we're not being them right now. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I can't agree with you more. There ought to be a number of sacred places in this country. It doesn't matter what faith you are. If that's where you are, you go there and you shouldn't be harassed by anyone or any organization. Part of why we are here, as I said earlier, is to get testimony to fashion what we think should be remedies for the situation. We can abolish ICE. We can reform ICE. We can do whatever. But I think in what we've come to believe as the greatest democracy in the world, we ought to have some kind of objective standards that we run this country by. And they can't be moved based on the situation. Our courts is a potential remedy, but in some instances, the courts have ended up being a bigger problem. We think coming to this part of the country is significant for a lot of reasons. A lot of the earlier remedies that we've talked about came because of the civil rights movement that got its nurturing here in the South. And the remedies basically have worked for a long time. And in some of our opinions, nothing was broken. But when people fail to participate in our system of picking our leaders, the system can, as we see now, can easily become broken in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion, getting rid of it. So what I'd like to start off with, and we'll have questions from members of the panel. I didn't think I would ever have to identify who I am because I was born here. But I've talked to a number of people who've had to do the same thing. But they look a little different. Because they look a little different, they've been asked about a passport. Some of them have told us we didn't need a passport because we were born here. What would we tell those 4 Sioux Indians in Minneapolis that was locked up for being immigrants? And they were Native American. They were born here. So sometimes we have to look at what we have. So I want to ask the same question to all 4 of our witnesses, starting with Mr. Odom. If you had a magic wand, what would you propose that we look at in correcting what you perceive as the immigration problem in this country today?
Wow. I'll go back to my testimony remarks, and I want to say that I really do believe that mass deportation and mass detention and deportation is the opposite side of a coin of mass incarceration. And so I don't believe that we can, and I think they're both expressly connected to the loophole in our 13th Amendment that allows for slavery as punishment for a crime. And so if we don't actually get to the heart of actually eliminating that exception, both around our states but also in our federal constitution, we will always have or be subject to an administration which will try to portray people as criminals in order to remove all their fundamental constitutional rights. So I would say really looking at that loophole. Obviously, the Constitution is very hard to change. We've tried to change this 13th Amendment loophole in the state of Louisiana. Many other states have tried to do it. But if I have a magic wand, I can be really, I can be really bold. That's what I would say. And that would also look at the fact that when we actually incarcerate and feel comfortable warehousing Louisiana citizens and American citizens without fundamental human and civil rights, it's much easier for us to do that to our immigrant brothers and sisters. And so eliminating that loophole and providing, when we say we want to take something down, we want to deconstruct a system, we have to say what we want in its place. in the state of Louisiana and in the United States, we have an economy that is completely dependent on bodies of black and brown and others. Let's be very clear. When we go into detention, we see people from all over the world. We see Russian and Ukrainian people fleeing violence. We see Sudanese people. We see it's not just black and brown people, it's all people. But our economy depends on that. And so we have to derive an economy that is based on the future of what this country will be. Other things that are derived not from forced labor and from incarceration, because that is what is driving this. This big nasty bill that's provided almost $1 billion of funding for these kinds of enforcement operations, most of that money will be used to erect warehouses, which will essentially stand as places that will be holding our immigrant brothers and sisters, and probably also American citizens as well, if they look not the right way for a period of time, all across our nation, erecting a new form of modern day slavery. So be very aware of that and be thinking of that as you continue to do your work.
Thank you. Congressman Kennedy wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, just a follow-up to that answer. First of all, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Thanks to all of you. Powerful testimony. Two quick things. In the big ugly bill, they put $75 billion in for the extension of what ICE is doing right now. Mm-hmm. That is wrong. But to go back to your answer about fixing the loophole, and you said, you've made attempts. What does that actually look like legislatively from a state level? Because while they may not be able to accomplish that goal here in Louisiana, they may be able to accomplish it, say, in the state of New York, where I reside, where you have a more understanding legislature to these very important immigration issues.
Yes, so there have been, I believe 7 or 8 states have eliminated this exception in their state constitutions. I'm happy to provide you with some information on that. Very happy to do that. The other thing my memory got jogged is that I understand that you're under incredible constraints with dealing with this new funding bill that's coming up. What I would ask is that in the same way that we're funding rogue individuals to do these invasions across our state, we should also, if that money is going to be allotted properly, it needs to go to the legal representation of incarcerated people, detained people, and it needs to be allocated for habeas defense. So every single person in the United States who is a citizen, who is prosecuted criminally and has charges brought against them is due an attorney. And that is provided for under state constitution, but also federal constitution. We have a right to legal representation when we're prosecuted. We believe that incarcerating immigrants in jails and prisons around our country without appropriate legal representation is akin to those, exactly what I'm saying to you. If there are billions of dollars that are being allocated in order to give people the right to round up people and lock them up, those people need legal representation, and that legal representation should be provided for by the American government, if the American government is going to do the seizing.
Ms. Wolf, you have your opportunity to tell us what you think we ought to do.
Magic wand. ICE is beyond reform. If I had a magic wand, I would say to shut down all detention centers as soon as possible and release people back to their families and their communities. But in addition to that is to never use these buildings to cage people again. I've had many conversations with people who work inside of these detention centers, and they don't want these jobs. It also weighs heavy on them. I've spoken to guards who will go 12, 16-hour shifts without a lunch break. It would be great to see this land and the infrastructure and the building being repurposed into something that's not extractive and doesn't profit off of the pain and suffering of people. I'm sure these rural communities could use more hospitals, could use more schools. So instead of using these buildings to cage people, that's what I would like to see. In addition to that, prohibiting these private companies from operating these jails, because that's what they are. They're jails. So for me, it's not about Band-Aids. It's about getting to the root of the problem. And I understand, yes, people want legal representation who are detained in these detention centers. People want the support with respect to filing habeas petitions. But to me, these are all Band-Aids. If you remove people from these cages, that's, to me, that's the root of the problem. And with respect to, immigration, I would say, providing a legal pathway for everybody to adjust their status. It's pure luck that my parents were able to adjust their status, and it's just pure luck that I was born in Queens, New York. People should not have to rely on just luck. We really need to have something that provides legal pathways for people and that does not criminalize migration and movement.
Yeah, I think you're saying the point is whatever we put together should be something we can all identify with, where we can all understand what the rules of engagements are, and basically treat people as human beings, not as objects or something foreign to this land. I made a statement earlier this morning that, people came to this great country from all over the world, and we welcome them to come to America. If you were oppressed, if you felt you could do better, then we wanted you to come. So now there's a group of people who want to close our borders and say, go back where you came from, do all these kind of crazy things, even though I was born here. I've been told, go back where I came from. And so, that's what we're struggling with as members of Congress. And I'll put this for the other two witnesses. Why do we have a dual system of accountability in this country? Why can't we just have a system of laws where we treat everybody the same? So I'm gonna let Mr. Lopez do it first, then Reverend, we're gonna let you fix us up.
Thank you. As somebody with two young daughters, I am accustomed to working with magic wands, so I'll take my opportunity there as well. I want to work both on what Alanah and Tanya both added here and start off by asking Congress to reassert its power. The Constitution delegates the power on immigration laws to Congress, not to the presidency, not to the president, not to the executive branch. And what we've seen, particularly in this administration, but what we've seen over the last few decades, is this erosion of power from Congress and this delegation of power from Congress to the presidency when it comes to immigration enforcement. Everything has been concentrated within the executive branch. When we talk about immigration courts, they're not an independent system. They work within the Department of Justice. And the president has been able to purge, has been firing immigration judges across the board, particularly those who had high grant rates, has been firing, yours truly included, people from the Board of Immigration Appeal who did not fit within his particular policy line. And so Congress has the authority and the ability to create an Article I immigration court system. Congress has the ability to build that out. Building on what Alanah was talking about regarding immigration representation for immigrants in these proceedings, immigrants are not entitled to an attorney. You have the right to an attorney, but if you cannot afford one in immigration court, one will not be provided for you and you must represent yourself. Senator Gillibrand, Congressman Kennedy from your state, she has introduced previously a bill, the Fairness to Freedom Act, to provide attorneys to immigrants when in immigration proceedings in order to create some kind of fairness in this process. And this goes to the issue that Ranking Member Thompson is getting to. Why do we have a dual system? Why do we have a system that we pretend is providing due process, that we give it the cloak of legality, of procedure, but then we strip people from it? We handicap them from being able to actually present their cases. We lock them up in the hellholes that are Gina and Basile and Pine Prairie, and we don't let them have an attorney. We remove them far away from their family and their support system. Mahmoud Khalil was brought from New York, and he wasn't taken to Elizabeth outside New York where there would have been protests every single day. He was brought to Gina, Louisiana, where thankfully we still had enough people who were able to come down and engage in protests, including y'all. Yeah. But what about the people who don't have the kind of notoriety or resources that Mr. Khalil did? The thousands of people that are locked away in these hellholes are not getting any kind of support. And I agree, we reinvest that money, right? I know politically we don't like to talk about abolishing. It doesn't look great. We can call it defunding, reinvestment, whatever term works better. Y'all can brand it. But this system, ICE, as a system, does not work. It is not reformable, and we cannot reform it.
Jump in on this. Two questions on that. First, coming from Rhode Island, we haven't seen the type of surge of ICE activity that you've had here and has happened in some other communities. But what does happen is, when someone is picked up by ICE in our part of the country, they are immediately sent down here to Texas or somewhere else, we believe specifically so that it's difficult for their attorneys to find them. And so I'm curious, for you all on the receiving end of that, it's helpful for us to have an understanding of what is currently the situation in terms of your ability to get in, to see people quickly who have been detained. If you get a call from someone in Rhode Island saying, hey, I need help finding my client or whatever else, what is the situation on the ground now? And then second, on the reform piece, Mr. Lopez, that you just brought up and others have alluded to, we have this system now where we have immigration courts that are part of the executive branch, where, to your point, any administration can come in, fire all the judges, clear house, change the rules of the game midstream. There are bills in Congress to make immigration courts part of the judicial branch, just like most other courts. Not that the judicial system in our country is perfect either. However, having it be less politicized, more predictable, I think is something that is worth considering. And to the conversation of, well, if you believe that ICE is just culturally so rotted out that you can't continue it, what do you replace it with? Because you still need to have some ability to enforce court orders and that sort of thing. If you move it to the judicial branch, you have a U.S. Marshal system that, again, is not perfect, but is designed to enforce court orders as opposed to, picking people up for civil offenses. So, as a reform model, what would you say about just sort of moving the whole thing to the judicial branch?
Yeah. So for starters, on the people getting in to see folks or being able to respond, we get those emails, unfortunately, on a regular basis. Getting in to see people, if you physically go there, is not incredibly difficult. If you're an attorney and you have the credentials to let you in and whatnot, you can go see people. The difficulty is the remoteness of it, right? If I get a call from somebody in Rhode Island and they tell me that their client is detained in Richwood, it's going to take me 5 hours to get there just to go visit with them, to get a document signed, anything. The issue is the remoteness is not then, it's not easy to then address the remoteness. So you can do video conferencing, you can do some faxing and sending stuff over to clients. The video conferencing, though, if somebody calls me today and they have a client that they want me to see, if I'm trying to do it on video or if I'm trying to give them the information to do it on video, the earliest they're going to see somebody is probably mid next week. There's just an incredible delay. And so going in person is really what's required, and that remote aspect of it. The fact that the nearest one is the one that's in Angola, and that's 2 hours away, and that's our nearest detention center from an area like New Orleans. And it's not just from New Orleans, right? From Dallas, from Houston, from Memphis. in a geographical radius, it is a 4 to 5 hour drive from any of those locations in order to get to the facilities. So it's incredibly difficult to find folks. Generally, what we do is we provide them with information as to how to set up the video conferencing, and then also providing them with information as to where the locations are, how basically the logistics of how to manage an issue down here. The other aspect about moving it to the judicial branch, I think from the judicial discussion of it, the immigration court system itself, yes, I think the judiciary has its own problems, but is more responsive, tends to be more responsive, tends to set the rules a little bit more. It's a longer game, it's more of a condition, and it's more independent. It's not subject to political whims overnight between January 20th and mid-March of last year. The immigration court system had been gutted by this administration.
More predictable, more,
Yeah. And so I do agree that there's a way of fixing that. There's, regarding the enforcement side, the way ICE was built up, which was just 23 years ago, right? Let's remember, ICE has not been around forever. It hasn't been part of all of our lives. It has only existed for 23 years. And the way it's been built up and then in its implementation has been severely bastardized as a way of attacking and targeting Black and brown people in the country that is the problem. From its root, from what it is and from what its purpose is, ICE was problematic. And we can shift that, right? We had INS, there were problems with INS in the past, but they weren't the same problems we have now. And they weren't weaponized the same way they've been weaponized now. So y'all taking oversight, y'all pulling it back, reasserting your power is the way to be able to put brakes on an unchecked executive.
And if I could just make just a statement about your first question. So the ACLU has a nationwide network of affiliates. So for example, when Mr. Khalil's case happened, we also had another case that happened simultaneously with Rumeysa Ozturk. We partnered with ACLU affiliates in all of our various states, our National Immigrants' Rights Project, and our attorneys here who actually, are on the ground and go to detention centers monthly. But we also are standing up a habeas project and have actually been fielding requests for habeas as ISLA has, as National Immigration Project has, from all over the country, and have been providing technical assistance and support to attorneys all over the country, and have actually been on the ground to actually go and visit with folks. And so we're building up our capacity to be able to kind of deal with the sheer volume of what's been happening, and we have been quite successful at doing so.
Could I add? One issue with respect to access is, Alanah referenced it, but along with our partners at the ACLU and ISLA, National Immigration Project has also been going on these KYRs, which stands for Know Your Rights, in presentations inside the detention centers. We have a problem now, which is that they are severely limiting the number of practitioners, including legal assistants, paralegals, and interpreters that can enter the facility. I will give you an example. Wynn Correctional has about 1,500 to 1,600 people, and right now ICE is only allowing us 8 hours with 6 people. It is impossible to be able to provide that type of orientation with those severe restrictions and limitations. And it wasn't always like that, but it's not a surprise that this is where we are.
Can you just explain that a little more, like what these sessions are? And
so the performance-based national detention standards allows for legal rights presentations to be conducted inside these ICE jails. Now, ICE has a lot of discretion and authority to say how those legal rights presentations can be conducted. In the past, for the past, 4 years, we've been able to bring anywhere from 10 to 15 practitioners, lawyers, legal assistants, into the facility for multiple days to be able to provide life-saving information, including how people can access the federal courts to submit a habeas petition. Now that has been severely restricted. And as I was mentioning, ICE has now said that we can only have a maximum of 6 people go into these facilities for 1 day at a time. That it's impossible. And you know, and with respect to the rurality of it, like, it's a 5-hour drive one way. I mean, it's, once we're out there, we want to be out there for as long as we can to provide that information. You know, if we're only at Wynn Correctional for 1 day for 8 hours, we're lucky if we see 60, 70 people. It's impossible. And in addition to that, the legal orientation programming, which is separate from the legal rights presentations, that funding has also been cut. So now there just isn't any legal orientation for people in detention.
Reverend?
Thanks for having us. I really appreciate the legal conversation, which is above my pay grade. But I do want to say that things have a spirit, and you can see it change in a hurry, as we've seen in our country. But if you were here right after Katrina, there was a very chaotic, dangerous situation, and then one man showed up, and his name was General Honore, and he said, "Put your weapons down," talking to law enforcement. That changed everything. What he was saying is people were operating with a spirit of suspicion, like everybody's guilty, so I just have my gun pointing at everybody. And now I think Americans feel like, do I have to carry my passport with me? Because especially if I'm not a white man, you know, I'm suspect in this country. And that, I think, is really taking a strong root again very quickly. And I also believe that a lot of Americans and most Americans don't want that. That even the law, right, has a spirit, innocent until proven guilty. There's an attempt to have a spirit to it. And I would just call us, even for myself, you know, anger can be helpful when it points you in the right direction, but you can become just as demonizing. And as we know that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only the light can. And we need a lot of light of truth, but we also need a lot of spirit in the way we do things, so that we're calling ourselves, as I have seen in our city, to be the kind of country with the kind of spirit we want to have. I think we've taken a big hit in these past 12 months again.
Thank you so much. I yield to the gentleman from Louisiana.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your patience and your willingness to be a part of this discussion. It's very difficult, more than you've been on the front lines. Ms. Odom.
Ms. Odom, like many Americans, I'm horrified by the Trump administration's dangerous, violent, and now deadly immigration enforcement activities. No one is safe from these violent activities. It seems like every day we see news stories about federal immigration agents assaulting people, citizens and non-citizens alike. Can you describe how these tactics are threatening everyone's civil rights and civil liberties? What does this mean for the people of New Orleans? And as members of Congress, what can we do to further demonstrate, as we're doing today, but also in action back in Washington, to help you in the fight that you struggle with every single day?
Thank you so much for that question. So I think what we've talked about throughout the course of all of our various testimonies today is a gross disregard for fundamental First Amendment rights, fundamental Fourth Amendment rights, so our free speech, our right to assemble, our right to protest, our right to resist and stand up against the actions of ICE and Border Patrol. The Fourth Amendment obviously would be our right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And that is something that we see so vividly in the state of Louisiana, but also in all of the occupied cities, because I think what's been most shocking, I think, to most Americans is the number of Americans who've had their fundamental Fourth and First Amendment rights violated. The dynamic that I spoke about of having to prove your citizenship and having to demonstrate your right to stand and be on American soil without state violence and state intervention is a fundamental flip of the actual burden of what our Constitution provides. It has taken it and flipped it on its head. We should not have the burden of proving to state and federal agents our right to stand and be in any place, either public or private, or have to actually prove our citizenship. That's a big problem.
Along that exact same line, we had Secretary Noem before our committee just a few weeks ago. I asked a very basic question. I asked, what does a migrant look like? What does an immigrant look like? I asked them, I said, you pay $50,000 for bonuses for ill-trained ICE agents who usually have 5 to 6 months of training. It's now been reduced to 47 days. I asked them the question, when you give them this $50,000 bonus and you send them on the task, what do you tell them to look for? What does an immigrant look like? What does an immigrant sound like? What do they walk like? Where do they hang out? Crickets. No one can answer the question, which goes back to your point. You're unilaterally stopping people and violating their rights.
That's right.
Just because.
So I've heard that Justice Kavanaugh has quite a bit of consternation because these stops are now called Kavanaugh stops. And the reason he has that consternation, and rightfully should, is because I don't care what law school you go to, whether it's ABA accredited or not, and frankly, every American and person in this country understands this, that you have a fundamental right as a person to stand in a place and to not be accosted by agents, either state or federal, if you have not been suspected of being committed a crime or there's no reasonable suspicion that you have. He knows that. For him to author an opinion that would suggest that a person who speaks Spanish, a person that is in proximity to a location like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, or a person who looks as if they are of international descent, agents should have the right to stop those persons. It's laughable because it is a violation fundamentally of everything that we've ever been taught as attorneys, and it is actually criminal, frankly. It's a criminal, and so he's very... he should be concerned because we all know that these Kavanaugh stops are completely unlawful and that that we've never been taught that. And I think that's the problem with what we're dealing with, and I really feel for you all being in this position. How do you counter lawlessness? We're trying to use the law to counter lawlessness. We're trying to fashion a legal remedy for things that are illegal. And that is very difficult. And I think we have to push the bounds of how we address it. And I think we can't just use the same tactics that we use when we're dealing with lawful conduct. Korematsu, when we started rounding up all Japanese Americans and putting them in internment camps, that is this. That is this. Unfortunately, we don't have a court that is as favorable to us at this time, but we have to recognize when we say this is not American, unfortunately, there is an underbelly of America. There is a shadow side. We all have them. This country has it too, but we are in that moment again. Let's study Korematsu. Let's study our history so that we can actually learn what we need to do to get out of it.
History has a very ugly way of repeating itself.
It rhymes. This rhymes a lot with Korematsu. And building out these warehouses and detention centers to lock up people who look like pretty much everyone here is the vestige of that.
Thank you. As my time winds down, real quickly, Mr. Lopez, in your testimony, you told us a story of Lerner, a young man brought to America as a child who's been locked in an ICE facility for months, despite being granted deferred action status in 2022. Can you tell us how being locked in this detention center has impacted Lerner's well-being? What does a typical day look for Lerner in that ICE facility?
Yeah, again, horrible that he can't be here to tell his own story about what's happening, but the way he speaks, fortunately, and this is one of the things that always continues to give me hope, is that every time that I speak with a client, every time I meet with somebody in detention, they still have hope. They're so happy. They want to talk to you. They want to explain what's going on and what their hopes are and what they want to do in the future. So Lynette is very energetic. He's very happy. He still wants to move forward, and he's willing to fight his case all the way through, which is an incredible testament to him and his soul and his way of being and what in his own way of moving forward. But in the detention center, he has to deal by whatever they tell him. Whenever they let him out, he gets to go out. He gets to go out approximately 3 to 4 hours a day to be outside. If he wants to go to the law library, he has to make a request, which has to be approved, and then he gets to go for, I believe it's 2 hours a day max, that they allow him to go to the law library. If he wants to speak with his parents or his mother in particular or any other support system, he has to set up a system, a very horribly named app called Getting Out, as though they're trying to make fun of the system that you're locked in the moment. And the family has to pay in order for him to have money on his commissary to speak with them and be able to talk to them and see them on a regular basis. If his family wants to go visit him, they have to drive from New Orleans 4 hours to Gina and 4 hours back. Only available on Saturdays and Sundays for family members, so it has to be on a weekend during very particular set hours. His ability to remain resilient and hopeful in those circumstances is astounding to me, and is the reason that we continue to do this work and continue to fight on his behalf.
Chairman, my time has elapsed. I yield.
Thank you very much. Witnesses have been fine. We're going to allow Mr. Magazine and Mr. Kennedy to close out.
Well, I already got to ask my question, so instead of using the full 5 minutes, I want to thank each of you for putting your talent and your energy forward in the cause of justice. You are doing incredible work, and I'm so grateful to all of you for what you're doing. And I'd like to close my time by addressing the students who are here. I hope what you've seen today is that although our country faces many challenges and incredible tragedies that continue to play out every day, you do have the power to make a difference and to be warriors for justice. We've got incredible panelists here who are not only fighting hard, but succeeding in many cases, succeeding in getting people released who have been wrongfully detained, succeeding in calling attention to injustice and forcing change. And I have a lot of confidence that under Chairman Thompson and Congressman Carter's leadership, when we are back in the majority in Congress, when Democrats are back in the majority in November, we will drive fundamental changes to the system that will make it fairer and more just. So, you know, as our former leader in the House Democratic Caucus, Speaker Pelosi, likes to say, know your power. And I just say to all the young people who are here today, know your power. You do have the power to make change. Just this morning, as we've been sitting here up in Minneapolis, you saw the Republican candidate for Minnesota for governor drop out of the race and say he's leaving the party because he can't, in his conscience, support what is happening to his state in Minnesota. You see people starting to speak out, exercising their right to peaceful protest, and making a difference, like making a difference nationally. And so it's messy, it's not always easy, but I hope you're as inspired by these experts and these witnesses in front of us today as I am. And it's just a real honor to be in this fight with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me also just extend my gratitude again to this distinguished panel. Your leadership is profound, and your testimony was inspiring and insightful. Just this past week, each member of this panel and our colleagues in the Democratic Caucus voted against DHS funding that would extend and expand the illegal actions of this out-of-control federal agency under this administration. The first organization to come out against that nationwide was ACLU. And there was momentum that built against it for all of the right reasons. We stand with you. We stand with the people of New Orleans. We stand with the people of Louisiana. We stand with the people of America that no better days are expected and demanded by our government. and we are fighting the good fight in Washington, D.C. And I'll also extend my gratitude once again to Chairman Thompson for organizing this panel and this hearing, for our extraordinary colleague, Representative Carter, for his gracious and influential welcoming here to New Orleans, but also his profound leadership in Washington as well. Again, my colleague, Congressman Magaziner from the Northeast, like me, we got to go back home to about 2 feet of snow. But I also want to extend this to the students. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attentiveness. And just know that our government, your government, is responsive to you. So it's what you make of it. So each and every one of you, get involved, volunteer, organize, mobilize, and demand what you expect out of your government leaders. And thanks for being here. Thanks for welcoming us.
Yeah. And let me join my colleagues in thanking our witnesses. You know, we could do a research paper on this issue. We could ask scholars to go out and come back with something. But part of what we need to do is talk to good people who do this every day. And you have fashioned in your own way, because you do it every day, solutions that we can take back. We will have other hearings. These are what you call field hearings. I wish my Republican colleagues would come, but they won't come. But that won't deter the Democrats in Congress from coming, and we will. The other thing is, we're also the sum total of our experiences as people. Part of the way that we act the way we do is how we were either brought up, or there was something we did along the way that the light came on. And so that's why we do what we do, to try to make a difference. ICE's rogue activities at this point is an embarrassment to this whole experiment called democracy. We are, and as someone said, a better country than this, but democracy requires management. If we don't manage this great democracy, it will gradually erode into something that we really will not be proud of. To that extent, I want to compliment the students who are here. My granddaughter is a graduate of Xavier University. Yeah. and she spent 4 years here. I didn't know what to expect. She just didn't want to go to college around home. So I searched high and low, and I see somebody else got to Xavier the same way my granddaughter did. You didn't want to go to school at home either, but you couldn't have chosen a better school. For 4 years, Xavier raised my granddaughter, and I'm so proud of her. I can say this, I'm Pawpaw. You understand? And that's a term of endearment, because now she's charting her wings. So I want you to encourage her. You got a great teacher. He came to Congress already prepared, and we love him. My other colleagues likewise are here. So we're here to make a difference. If we can spend billions of dollars incarcerating people, can you imagine if we spent those same dollars educating and making life better for people? I mean, everybody would want to come to this country, and they should, for all the right reasons. So thank you all so much. I'll have my colleague, Congressman Carter, to close us out.
I don't think I could have said it any better. The chairman was factual, eloquent, and powerful. This panel has graced us with your knowledge, your hard work, your commitment. We cannot say thank you enough. To all of the advocates who couldn't be here today, many of which will go unnamed. Many don't have a title, but they work every day. To those who have been violated, to their families who've had to endure watching their loved ones murdered, their rights taken away, stripped away from them, we're here for you. You're not alone. To our young students in the audience, I'm so proud of my Xavier University, my alma mater, and my incredible class of students who really demonstrate how bright the future is for all of us. And to my colleagues on the panel, I can't thank you enough. For our staff who traveled from far away to be here, for my staff who works tirelessly, to the mayor, the city council, its president and all of its members. Councilmember Green is still with us. The others are governing and doing what they have to do. I see Councilmember Green has been governing from his phone and participating, doing double duty. But thank you all for being here. Know that this is not the end. This is a step along the journey as we'll fight to hold everyone accountable, to make sure that our Constitution matters, our rule of law matters, and that justice for all is not just a slogan, but something what we would demand people live by. God bless you, and thank you for being a part of this hearing.
Appreciate it.